Hey there. So I am going to continue on with the next part of the video. I got the top part finished and I've switched my video here for you. Okay, so this is how you press it. You don't actually have to have a iron if you don't want to. You just line it up where you can see it. Oh, and I wanted to show you, I've gone back and I've trimmed back. So there's only this little bit between the threads and the edge of the stitching. So you just press it with your finger. I've actually pre-pressed this a little bit, but I can show you. I just go in and I press it really good, with my fingers. And you can see I'm just pressing with my fingers. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Okay. So once I have it, and I have all this extra thread here, or fabric here, that's okay. So I fold it under and over, and I have this really nice line here, okay? See that? See how nice that is? And I go up, not very far, but a little far. Now if you want to, you can pin it. Now I don't always pin. It kind of depends, honestly, on my whim and what am I doing. Right now that the wind keeps coming up and grabbing my fabric just every once in a while. At least we have a breeze. It's been so miserable hot here with no breeze. And I don't want to catch the fabric of my table either, so I grab that. And I don't want to go too far because if you see there's this curve, right? That's the arch of the top of the head. I only want to grab a little bit of that. Oh, there's that wind. Oh, it feels so good. Okay. So I don't have as much fabric there to grab, so I want to make sure I pin it just a little bit. I don't want to go too far over that curve though, because it'll get in the way, the pins will get in the way of the actual sewing. But I do want to grab some of them, just to get me started and as I move through. Okay, so look, that's almost as tightly ironed as if I had been using the sewing machine. Okay. So I'm going to go in here. You can see I have 1, 2, 3 layers of fabric. I'm going to go in the middle here, okay? And I'm just going to go to the edge of that piece because I want to hide my knot inside there. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of the linen and a little bit of the top piece there. Just anchor it because this is all going to be inside the edging. That'll be your ties. So I'm going to go a little further in, and it's just a little bit of a whip stitch here. So I just grab a little bit of the fabric and then come up. It's not a lot, it's just a little bit of the fabric and up. Okay? And I make my stitches really small because what I really want to showcase on this St. Brigida cap is going to be the embroidery. So I don't want my stitches to be really big, and I have sewn things together deliberately with bigger stitches because the purpose was to show the stitches. I don't want to do that on this one. So I want to just do tiny little stitches. I'm just whip stitching it. I'm not doing anything fancy. Somebody asked me not very long ago, well, about head covering and why do the older players in the SCA insist so much that your head has to be covered? And I tried to remind them gently that it's historically accurate. I mean, it wasn't until a fairly recent age that a woman would ever go out without a hat or a bonnet or a cap or something. I mean, it's just historically what we've always done. And yes, there's cultural and political and socioeconomic, pieces of information to know about history to understand a little bit more about why that is so. Absolutely. And I'm not going to go into that here. But finding something that's comfortable when we live in an era where, oh, there's 2 Air Force jets. Awesome. We don't get those around here very often. They're also really loud. Sorry about that. The practicality of head covering in the SCA is pretty important, honestly. It has to do with coolness, keeping your head cool, or keeping your head warm. If you are somebody who lives in a climate-controlled building and you go camping and it's hot, you need to wear breathable fabrics and you need to have something on your head. One of the best ways to cool off, and I used this at 20 Air because it was miserable hot, was keeping a little spray bottle of water and misting down my face, my neck, and keeping my head, my St. Brigida cap damp. It really made a difference. I was not nearly as miserable as I have been before. Also wearing light colors, breathable fabrics, those are all important things. The other thing to take into consideration is that your hair and your head get greasy and oily, etc. when you're camping and you haven't had the opportunity to take a shower or whatever fairly frequently. So keeping your head covered keeps the oils and the greases and the dirt off your garments. That's actually just a pretty straightforward reason. Okay, so I've reached where my thread is too small and I'm back stitching. I'm just going back through, and then my needle's really long here, so I'm just going to cut it. But sometimes I'll go back through 2 or 3 times. I don't knot it, okay? And the knot that I had on this one, on this end, is way down here at the end, and that's going to be inside my other one. But as I move forward, I'll show you how I get rid of the knots. I start with a knotted thread, just because otherwise I lose the damn thing in my needle. But for practicality and for tidy stitching, I do get rid of the knots before I sew very far. So on the curve, you're going to have a little bit more tendency of the fabric to bunch because it's on a curve. So just be tidy and meticulous with your folding. See how this is coming unraveled here? I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to tuck it, okay, so that it lays as flat as possible right here. And then come down here and pin. And then I'm going to be down here. This one's got a little bit more of a bunching, so I fold it over with my fingers. I'm having trouble here. I usually do this part just as I go because it does have a tendency to ruffle on me a little bit. So I fold it over and fold it down. And then I pin it. And see I have this piece that's come up here. Just take your pin, tuck it in. I picked it up so that I can get behind that with my other finger because I really want to make sure that it lays flat, and I'm going to press it with my thumb really hard so that it, linen remembers. Just you remember that linen remembers. So if you press it correctly, it's got that crease in it. So I just need to get that to lay down properly so I can pin it. Now, like I said, you don't have to pin. You can do without pinning. And I do a lot of sewing without pinning, but I wanted to show you that you can. If it helps you, you can pin. Okay, so I have another string here. It's got a knot on the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch on the top, okay, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to come out this little curve, but my thread's not out on the other side, so you can't see it. I've just used that to disappear. Now I'm going to pick up that thread here, back to whip stitching. I have a little bit of this that's not even, so I want to push it in a little bit more. I want to make it as tidy as possible. Okay, now I have that big old knot here. I can just get rid of that because I've started already stitching. It's not going to come undone because I've come backwards and now I'm going forwards. It's not going to go anywhere. And just another whip, stitch. Okay, so I think that's the last trick for that one. So I'm going to stop the video and I'll come back after I finish stitching that and we'll work on the next part.